Let's set the context right first. Do I think that limited Lightcones in Honkai Star Rail are a necessity? The answer is straight up no. For any of you free-to-play small spenders, don't feel pressurized ever by these kind of videos or any videos out there. To me, personally, limited Lightcones are a luxury product. It's the same as your Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, all these kind of products, not necessary. You can really work fine with a lot of the free-to-play options, your standard S ranks, 5 stars, and all your 4-star alternatives as well. So you don't need limited Lightcones, but you guys have requested, you want me to do a list of Lightcones that I think are very good investment for the future, very, very great alternatives as well. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm going to be sharing with you some key ones that I look out for and my thought process when I'm like checking them out. One of the important things that you need to know is my definition of best is very different from a lot of other people out there. So it's very important to know the definition of the best. For me, a Lightcone that is very good is something that can be used by a lot of people. Like, let's take this free-to-play one, Cruising in Stellar Sea, for example. A lot of people can use it. There are not many alternatives. Because if you're buying a luxury product, you want to wear that handbag to as many occasions as you can, right? You don't just want to like bring that bag just for a wedding, which is only once in, I don't know, like a year, maybe you just have one occasion. Then it's not really very useful. And after you have the wedding phase, no one gets married, then your bag is like just dumped in one corner. That's a total waste of money and a waste of luxury money as well. And another thing that's also very important, when you are buying a luxury product, you must also care about community opinion, because if you are paying for a luxury product and no one else thinks it's good, you will have that sour feeling that I just wasted my money. It's a very, very sour taste. So the first of all, the thing that I think is the most attractive out of all of them, and I'll just give you a TLDR, patience is all you need, is my top pick for best Lightcones in Honkai Star Rail. Let me explain why. This is not the most broken in terms of like DPS and whatnot, but if you think about Honkai Star Rail characters in the Nihility class, there are 3 types. You have one, the DPSs, your damage dealers, your DOT damage dealers like Black Swan, Kafka. You have your crit characters like Akirion and whatnot, which are dealing a lot of crit damage. And then you have your debuffers like Jiao, your Silver Wolves and stuff like that, who are mainly supporting to add more DPS to the rest of your main DPS that are like trying to dish out the damage. Patience is all you need, plays into all 3 of the categories of the Nihility class. Damage increase, great for all 3. Maybe the supportive debuffers like Jiao and Silver Wolf don't really care too much about it, but it's still nice to have. Additional speed here of 14.4%. Speed increase is a percentage speed increase, so it's not just flat speed, which scales with faster moving characters. Very, very great as well. Stacks up to 3 times, so total 14.4%. Speed anyone likes, so your DPS, DOT, your supports all love it. And you have this is I think like the best part about this signature Lightcone. This is so good, so unique, that you slap this on basically any character and you turn them into a DOT character. And the best part about this is a unique shock. Erode is unique, which means you can stack with other shock characters like Serval. Kafka herself is not even a unique shock application. Hers is just normal shock. So her Lightcone is like more unique than her in terms of the DOT application. This is so crazy, because if you think about the roster that we have, and let me just go into my character screen over here, if you check out like Nihility characters, you can slap Black Swan with their Lightcone, and Black Swan is able to proc both Wind Shear as well as shock just with a change of the Lightcone. If you have a character like Jiao, you are in future running him as maybe in a DOT team, you slap on that Lightcone and immediately your Jiao is now dealing both burn and a unique shock mechanic. Both of them unique. His Ashen Rose is unique, his shock was unique because of the Lightcone. Very, very insane value that you can get, especially if you're trying to build up like Arcana stacks, because you need to hit like multiple different elements to get the stacks for Black Swan. And all the different applications, you immediately can widen the versatility of your roster very, very quickly just by having the Lightcone. Patience is all you need. So that is why it's my top pick. I think it's just like super good, super versatile. Everyone can find some value with it, and this scales decently well with time, right? Most people will use it, and it fundamentally changes up the game because your team compositions could change. You'll make it a lot more flexible too. So that is my thoughts on Patience is all you need. Probably my top pick in terms of a luxury product. For the Nihility ones, I just want to touch on some stuff real quick. I don't think the rest of them are like super attractive. One notable mention is Along the Passing Shore. I don't think this is like one of the best Lightcones in terms of versatility and whatnot, but this Lightcone is one of the exceptions that I made for my account and I pulled it. And of course, not all the Lightcones I pull on my account are like good decisions. Right? I did make bad decisions here and there, especially in the early part of the game. But why Along the Passing Shore is really good is there aren't much alternatives to along the passing shot in Honkai Star Rail for Akirion. Her Lightcone choices are very limited. Here, you get crit damage, which is super rare for Nihility Lightcone, and on top of that, you get like debuffs that she can proc on the enemy, which helps her increase her uptime on her ultimate ability, as well as like damage increase. If you think about Akirion's alternative from the perspective of one of the best DPS in the game, she really only has Good Night Sleep Well, which doesn't apply a debuff on the enemy, doesn't improve her crit. She has Resolution Shines or Pearls of Sweat at S5, which applies a debuff but doesn't improve her crit. You have Boundless Choreo, which increases crit and does a little bit more damage if they're reduced defense or slowed, but it doesn't help her apply more debuffs, so it doesn't improve her uptime on her ultimate. Along the passing shot does that, it does everything. It helps her speed up her ultimate, increases her damage, apply like these debuffs and increase some damage, which is why I think it's worth it to consider. I probably would put this as a category that is like A tier if I would do anything. If I would do like a tier list, Patience all you need is like S tier, along the passing shot is like A tier. The rest of them I don't think is very, very necessary, not too attractive. At this point, a lot of people on Twitch, when we were streaming on Twitch TV, EODGamer, the hunt was something that a lot of people wanted to consider, and in particular, people were looking at Worrisome Blissful. And moving on from like the other Lightcones that we have from Nihility over into Hunt. Hunt categories are interesting because you have two types of characters. One are the DPSs and one are the semi-supports. Topaz falls in the semi-support category, where this Lightcone over here increases crit rate, increases her damage. So Topaz, if you think about overall kit, she does two things, right? She does a bit of damage and she does supporting for the rest of the team. This Lightcone is exactly Topaz's kit, where you have the buff her individual damage, and then at the same time you have this buff your teammate damage by increasing the amount of crit damage that they take. My biggest issue with Worrisome Blissful is not that it is a lousy Lightcone. This crit damage here is 24%, but you're paying as much as you would for a limited character. If you go into Topaz here, the real main competition that I think is really, really important to consider is Topaz's E1. Increasing her damage is nice, but most team compositions nowadays don't really rely on Topaz to do like tremendous amounts of damage. You usually have some sort of like main carry, especially nowadays with like Fei Xiao coming around. That character is probably going to do a bulk of your damage, which means E1 is likely going to be more important than Topaz's S1. And I would actually prioritize E1 over S1 in that case, because this is like a 50% crit damage stacking on the enemy, right? When the target is inflicted with this debtor state. I think this is way more attractive. Topaz's E1 is really a luxury. I don't think it's a super necessity for any of you who are like looking at the Lightcone and like thinking to pull on it and stuff. Not that great. Granted, one of the key things about this Lightcone is it's one of the only supportive Hunt Lightcones in the game. Even the free-to-play ones like Cruising the Stellar Sea increases her own individual damage, but you're paying like $200, $300 at this point for a 24% crit damage buff. Is it worth it? I'm not too sure. There is an alternative, and I'm sorry for any of you free-to-play players. This is a Battle Pass one, so you can get it for like $10-15 if you buy the Battle Pass. But this, I think, solves a lot of problems. It's a very, very good in-between. I talked about this way back when Topaz was first released, like long time ago, way back with like Jing Liu and stuff. I said that Return to Darkness is actually one of the best alternatives, and it's a super cheap alternative. In her kit, she's does want to deal damage, so you have this crit rate increase. At the same time, you have a supportive aspect here of dispelling enemy buffs. There are few units in the game that are excellent at dispelling buffs, and this Lightcone turns your Hunt character into a semi-support, because you can just keep like helping dispel buffs for your team, removing like their revive mechanic and whatnot if they continuously stack buff on themselves. I think this is really strong, especially if you have a few dollars to spare. Return to Darkness is great on Topaz and Nambi too. And those are my thoughts. The rest of them, I don't think is like, the rest of them are very individualistic. So in comparison to like Akirion, her Lightcone increases the damage a lot. Very important because there are few alternatives. Topaz and Nambi, that you can increase the damage. If you're talking about a supportive element, I don't think it's as necessary as an E1. Her E1 definitely stands out a lot more compared to like Akirion, with much less choices. The rest of the Lightcones, the Hunt Lightcones, you could like argue and debate like which one is better for which of them in terms of the other S ranks. Just gonna like do a quick thoughts. Like this is very good. Dr. Ratio Sound is pretty nice. Crit damage when the enemy is debuffed, which is relatively universal. You have stuff like this, the In the Night, which is relatively universal. These two are probably my like higher up picks, because any Hunt character will be able to like probably use them quite well. at the end of the day, you just need one, and then you switch them around. I picked like in the night way back in 1.0, so I just use this and I just swap it around all my hunt DPSs, which works fine. Other than like specific DPSs like Boot Heal, which needs break, and for example like Fei Xiao's signature here, which you need like her crit rate for the defense ignore. These are a little bit more niche. I don't think it's like super important. You can get by fine with like cruising the Stellar Sea, or if you have like one of the other Baptism of Pure Thought in the night, I think it's like good enough. And that's my thoughts in general about the hunt Lightcone category. Where I absolutely hate, now going on to like, I mentioned some Lightcones that I really love, that are pretty decent, some thoughts on like more popular ones. The ones that I think are absolute waste of money is defensive Lightcones, like the Abundance ones. And here's why. If you think about Lightcones, right, you are not only pulling for the substats here, this long wall of text, but for DPS characters, you care a lot about the main stat increase. Because like you see here, 635 attack for the main stat for Akirion's signature, whereas if you use something like Boundless Choreo, you only get 476. So you get the main stat increase of the Lightcone when you're upgrading to a signature Lightcone as well. And that is something that Abundance Lightcones don't have. If your healer is dying with a 4-star Lightcone, chances are you're most likely building that character not correct. Maybe it's not, you can improve your gear first before considering going for the signature Lightcone. You're generally fine with a lot of 4-star alternatives. There are a lot of good 4-star alternatives that give very nice effect. You have like free-to-play ones like Quick Pro Crow, which gives massive amounts of energy. You have like tons of other stuff that like does so many different things already that you have. So if you need the 5-star stats, chances are not building it right. So at the end of the day, when we are pulling Abundance Lightcones in particular, you are looking at this chunk over here, which both of them, let me just give you a summary, is like dog shit. You're paying $200 for stats. Attack increase, energy increase for this one, speed increase by 1 turn. 1 turn is like super short. I don't think it's necessary. $200 can be better spent in a lot of other places for Luota's Lightcone. Similarly for Ho-Ho, additional healing. If you need this for additional healing, something is wrong with your builds. Being very frank. Energy regen 12% is great, but $200 not worth it. This is like what, 12% attack? 12% attack and 12% energy regen for a character that isn't requiring this to outperform, to like actually complete the rotations. I don't think it's necessary. $200 can be spent better elsewhere. There are so many better alternatives, right? All of them, all the 4-star ones are actually pretty decent at some point. You can use like certain things here and there. And that is my honest opinions on like the Abundance Lightcones. Not worth it. On the flip side, however, Preservation has one exception. Of course, same as Aventurine's signature, you don't really need this as much, but this is pretty decent as well, because when you provide a shield to ally, Wearer's crit damage increase, it helps him become like a bigger damage dealer. When Wearer's follow attack hits an enemy target, 100% chance to increase the damage taken, so it's kind of like a mini debuff in itself. But if you're just looking for a mini debuff, you can work very fine with an alternative that is a 4-star, which is Trend of Universal Market already. So Aventurine's Lightcone, I would say, is probably out of like the 4 of the different Lightcones, the second highest in terms of priority, because you don't really need it. But then again, I don't think any of the Abundance defensive Lightcones actually are a necessity, because they are very good alternatives. Like Landor's Choice is so good, so much damage reduction, and it's basically enough for a lot of your defensive preservation units to sustain themselves. This offers you the debuff that you need sometimes that you are doing. Day 1 of my new life gives you team-wide damage reduction and protection, which is fantastic. The one that I actually pulled, and I don't think is a necessity also, is She Already Shut Her Eyes by Fu Xuan. One of the biggest downsides of Fu Xuan is when she's in Simulated Universe, she gets one-shotted by ridiculous amounts of damage, and I just wanted like a 10k HP. So that 10k HP like Fu Xuan. So I think this is probably the one that I'll rank number 1. Why is that? Is not only does it give you massive amounts of stats which Fu Xuan needs, and the key difference between Fu Xuan and the other characters is she uses the entire stat line that you have. Her HP always goes down, which means that you are efficient because you use the additional stats that you get from the signature Lightcone. By having this more HP, you convert this to damage reduction for your teammates essentially, because you can take more damage for the rest of your team rather than like Fu Xuan dying halfway. Prevents her again by getting one shot. You use the whole stat pool. That is why Fu Xuan benefits a lot from 5-star gears versus the other characters in the game. The rest of them, it's just their massive thick shield, right? If the enemies don't hit them, then you will never utilize their HP stat or defense stat that they have until they get hit. Fu Xuan, doesn't matter whether you hit her or not, she always apportions the damage, so you will always utilize her stat pool. Energy regen is okay, it's like nice. Damage reduction, okay, it's like nice too. All of these are like great, so 3 different ones that are nice. The one that has great utility, of course, is this one over here. which is restore the entire HP, which is like 80% of your HP for a team. This is a huge amount. Pretty much like full heals everyone up, so she can like solo sustain your entire team, even on like super long, super hard fights. I think that Fucc is, with her Lightcone, is like super comfy to play, especially if you're auto battler. But then again, I like remain my stance. Preservation, abundance, not necessary. I was using Landa's choice previously, like, and I was working really fine with it. I just felt like getting her to 10k HP, so I went for she already shut her eyes, but it's a calculated decision. So we touched on most of them. We have 3 ones left. We have the Erudition ones, the Harmony, and the Destruction. Let's start things first off with like probably the least exciting one, which is Erudition, and then we'll go on with the more exciting 2. Out of all of these Lightcones, the 3 of them here, Before Dawn and an instance before a gaze, as well as Yet Hope is Priceless, for the 3 of them, I don't think Erudition Lightcones are super important. They are nice, but they are not like super critical for Erudition characters aren't game breaking right now. We don't have anyone that really controls the meta and like really dominating the game state in Erudition class. We are mostly having like Destruction, now like Akirion, Nihility, and a lot of them is like getting into Hunt. So Before Dawn used to be like one of the best in the game, but I didn't pull it also. This had like massive amounts of crit damage, massive amount of damage buffing for Jingyuan. But Erudition characters in general, not super strong, and I didn't really like the follow attacking thing. So you can't really use this super well outside of follow attacks, follow attacking Erudition characters. The one that I actually like a little bit more, but it's also not a priority, is an instance before a gaze. It gives you the same crit damage that Jingyuan's Lightcone gives you, but at the same time, you get a massive amounts of energy damage, scaling of your out damage that scales with your energy. Of course, the flip side to this is like super general because you can slap it on any Erudition character, so your luxury product is like super well used now, right? The alternative is you actually have a Battle Pass one. Today is another peaceful day, which gives you slightly lower, like almost half, maybe slightly more than half of the amount of damage increase, up to 160 from this Today's another peaceful day. You miss the crit damage, but this is like giving you the same amount of versatility for a much cheaper price. So between all 3 of them, I think the most attractive is Argenti's one, but I don't think it's like super good also. You can make do with like a lot of the other Lightcones. This is also like relatively niche, right? It's not super great. It is okay. This is like semi DPS-y, semi like supporty kind of thing, because you ignore the enemy's defense follow up, but it's only individual damage, so I don't think it's like super good for very generic use also. All 3 of them are not that great in my opinion. Destruction Lightcones, let's go on with the second last category here and let's talk about this. Destruction Lightcones are in a very interesting place. This was one of my mistakes in the game, and back then we didn't have the runway of what we see now. Back then when we were in the Destruction, there were very few Destruction Lightcones free to play that had crit rate and crit damage. In fact, I think until today, we don't even have many that have crit rate, crit damage. They always have like a certain criteria to give you the additional crit stats. So that's what made like Destruction Lightcones very attractive to pull, because they give you a lot of crit which no other alternative had, and give you like nice stats for the DPS. And back then it was like a Destruction meta, Blade, Jingliu, Imbibitor Lune, they just like stacked us all with all these massive ones. So there are a lot of alternatives now. And honestly, I think you do need, out of all the characters in game, Akirion is like probably one of the ones that need the signature a lot, and Destruction characters generally want their signature a little bit more, with the exception of maybe Firefly, because Firefly doesn't really care too much about crit rate and crit damage, so it is much more obtainable with like the other stuff that you have in the game, because you do not need that stats from Destruction Lightcones. On the Fall of the Aeon is very good, but unfortunately it doesn't have crit rate and crit damage also. For any of you free to play, you can just like use on the Fall of the Aeon for most part. But I think Destruction Lightcone, their signatures are great, especially the 3 of them, Imbibitor Lune, Jingliu, and Blade for the respective characters, but none of them I really like too much. I don't really think it's like super good. Of course, one thing is you can proc this ability nowadays, Blade signature, if you have Jade. So Jade makes this unreachable sight like pretty much universal for any DPS to give you like this additional damage increase over here. So it's like quite nice that you can get. Jingliu is of course really good too, because you get a lot of this universal defense shredding, but it's only good for her because she's the one that procs this the fastest, the quickest. But Destruction Lightcones I think is great, but not super critical as well. And it is a mouthful. If you're finding value in this video so far, do give me a like, comment, and subscribe for more such future content. Leave me a comment below also for your thoughts. What are some of the things that you want to share? We'll probably be doing a community follow-up comments based on the comments that you guys have, so appreciate any comments too. Now, last one here. There are 3 dominating Harmony characters in the game, which is this Flowing Night Glow, you have Sparkle's signature, and of course, Runmei signature. I chose one or the other, but is it the best? Let's talk about it in this video. First of all, I think the one that matters the least is probably Earthly Escapade, but yet it's still very good. It gives you a lot of crit damage, which characters like Sparkle, characters like Bronya can also use. It's a very rare stat in the Harmony gear. Eventually, if you have a Harmony DPS, this might be interesting to see too. At the start of the battle, you gain this Mass ability. When wearer has Mass, you gain allies gain crit rate, and their crit damage increased by a certain amount, which is very, very strong. For every 1 skill point the wearer recovers, including skill points, they gain 1 stack of Radiant Flames, and when the wearer has 4 stacks of Radiant Flames, all stacks are removed and they gain Mass, which lasts for 4 turns. So you have to use a lot of skill points in order to recover a lot of skill points in order for you to like get this uptime. So you have to be basic attacking a lot. So other than Sparkle, it's quite tricky to proc this full effect to get the massive buff. Otherwise, you're just relying on like this 32% crit damage. So this is in essence a very, very niche Lightcone for Sparkle only. Other than that, you can't really use it. I'll talk about Runmei's one first, and then we'll go on to Robin. Leave the best for last because that's what's currently on the banner. Runmei's one is interesting. It gives you a lot of break effect, which helps her hit her threshold stats higher or much more easier. When you have like an increase of damage, increase of 24%, which is on top of like the massive amounts that she does. I think she does already like 48% or something. Combined together, I think it's like 72 in total. Break effect exceed 150, 1 skill point recovered, so it's good utility there as well when you use the ultimate ability, so you get some value out of her too. And start off every wave, get 10 energy. This is like nice. But your main one is like the stats that you have, and also this 24%. I think the value of past self in mirror comes when you do not have memory of memory of the past S5, because break effect is very important for Runmei, because as a character that maximizes her buff, she converts all of like the break effect into like damage buffing, which is in one of the notes here, like this one over here. Every 10% that exceeds 120, she increases the damage of up to like 36%, which basically means you need roughly around 180% break effect, if I'm seeing here right, 180% break effect, which is not easy to get. Only if you have like the signature, then you can push it beyond, but it's still very, very possible to hit that stats as well. That's one of the key things about Runmei that you know. She does have a stat requirement to meet, and you only usually meet that with like a light cone that gives you this thing. So if you do not have memories of the past, probably her signature is like good to find that stat, but then again, not necessary. It's just like damage percentage gain. You will eventually find it if you like farm godlike gear. So I don't think her signature is good. I just got this because I really like Runmei. I use her in everything, and this just like helped increase the overall damage that she did. The one that I think is the best out of all of the Harmony ones and the most interesting is maybe Flowing Light Glow. Why is that? Is as you are building up for your ult, you gain energy regen, which is generally what you want to help you get your ult faster, because any character that uses this, you want to get that stats, right? You want to get their ult as soon as you can. So energy regen is great, 15% energy regen. And when you have an ult, well, after you use the ult, you then gain this condenser effect, which increases the wearer's attack by 48% and increases all allies damage dealt by 24%. So this all allies damage dealt by 24% is very similar to the Runmei Lightcone, but at the same time, this gives you a lot of damage for Robin herself, turning Robin into more of like a DPS character. So this in essence is a more specifically focused on Robin's DPS, because you give her a lot better stats to turn her into a more damaging monster, which is Robin's unique traits, turning her into a damage dealer that is from a supportive role, which is other supports like Runmei, Sparkle don't really have that. The other alternatives are not very good as well, because none of them increase her damage as much. So out of all three, probably I'll rank Robin's Lightcone as good, but not necessary. It's not very generic on the scale of patience is all you need, but probably in the likes of something, for example, like Akirion's Lightcone, where it does make a difference with and without the Lightcone. But I think still, Robin, in my opinion, if you guys are like FOMO and like thinking about the Lightcone, it's more important to go for her E1 first, which just turns her into a general like utility character. If you're really looking for damage from your support, probably you can find it better in your DPS and other places. First, maybe you check your relics. And if you found this video helpful, do leave me in a comment as well some of your thoughts. Maybe I missed out something, maybe your opinions differ. I'll be happy to read them and share with you guys in a follow-up video. Thank you guys again so much for watching. See you next video.